can't be interrupted when they're on their off-duty time. So there are 4 provisions in the proposal that ensure that we are minimizing the impact of harassment. And of course, as all things federal or enforcement related, it included some pretty hefty fines for anyone who violated that anti-harassment provision. So those are the 4 key provisions of the electronic logging device proposal. We are now going through all of those comments. We have a dedicated team to move through it in an expedited way, in a very thorough way, because we want to get this final rule on the street early next year. And then Congress said, because by the way, Congress mandated the agency to move forward with an electronic logging device rule. And Congress in its mandate said, when you have a final rule, when you publish a final rule, you need to give the industry and law enforcement, the world, 2 years before it takes full effect. So everybody would have 2 years to phase into this new rule and this new requirement. That's the essence of the electronic logging device rule. And the last thing I wanted to talk about with regard to our programs is the Compliance Safety Accountability Program, CSA. Many of you know it. In many ways, you might even know it better than I know it, although I've lived with it from the moment I came on board at FMCSA. Myself and 2 administrators before me developed this program. The CSA program is intended to be an improvement over the way the agency in the past and industry and outside stakeholders in the past could prioritize where high-risk carriers were and also identify how they were performing overall. So again, the development of it actually started under the administrator of Medicaid, you may know that, Anne Ferro. It followed through under John Hill. And then when I came on board, we were at the phase of actual deployment, which now has been in place since the end of 2010. For the perspective of CSA, it takes real-time performance data, the inspection data, collected from over 3.5 million inspections carried out at roadside each year, and violation and clean history report data from the investigations that FMCSA personnel do. We've matched it all together along with crash records, all crashes again, and I know we're going to talk about that, not just particular crashes. We've matched it all together into a predictive analytics tool and a performance measurement tool that allows us as an agency to prioritize which carriers have the types of patterns that suggest they are a risk to the public, such that the agency needs to focus its investigative work on that company, or just send a warning letter, or make sure that state law enforcement has it prioritized for pulling over for an inspection if this is a company that's shown a pattern of problems, both with straight compliance and with violations that directly correlate to crash risks. So at the heart, CSA is intended to, and does today, allow us to prioritize our work and provide individuals and companies, individual owner-operators, I should say, companies, the opportunity to see their own data and change their behavior based on what they may not have realized had been a growing problem. And customers, and for the motor coach industry, consumers of passenger coach travel, better visibility into how that company is both complying with the national standards and also performing when it comes to driver safety, vehicle maintenance, key areas on our service compliance. So those are the 3 core programs I wanted to bring up in my remarks before we go into questions. I want to wrap up with something that many of you see every single day across our country, and that's the state of our infrastructure, the state of our highways, the impact of a restricted bridge that you used to be able to use, but now it's restricted because it's deficient in its construction, the state of decay and decline in our highway system across the country. And I bring it up because Secretary Fox and President Obama have been very clear on the need for our country to mobilize behind investing in our infrastructure. Our parents and our grandparents did it 50 and 75 years ago, and we have to look around and say the investment in our national highway system has been what has enabled America to be the strongest economic power in the world, to enable the quality of life that you as professional drivers bring to everybody's home. And that infrastructure and the investment in that infrastructure has continued to decline as Congress keeps putting off the inevitable of revisiting a multi-year highway funding bill and transportation infrastructure funding bill. It's something that Congress used to be able to do very effectively every 5 or 6 years in a bipartisan way, and in the past decade has really struggled to do. They were successful in getting a MAP 21 proposal out, a 2-year proposal that we're working under now that includes that ELD mandate, but it is time to reinvest. And so the President sent to Congress a bill called the Grow America Act. And in it is a proposal for significant investment into our infrastructure, a way to pay for that investment, and methods in making that investment that ensure that highway construction, highway planning, bridge renovation are all done in a much more efficient way, in a robust way, taking into account great bottlenecks, components that are very, very important to you in your work every single day. It also includes some safety provisions, and one that is near and dear to my heart, and one that we at FMCSA work very hard on because it is extremely important, and that goes back to driver pay. And making sure that just like every other safety-sensitive transportation professional in our system, whether that's a pilot, whether that's a rail engineer, whether that's a marine pilot, bay pilot, that you too are paid when you are on duty, not driving. There's no reason you should not be compensated just because your equipment is not moving. And so there is a provision. Now again, we're the DOT. We don't manage, we don't have necessarily the ability to influence the Fair Labor Standards Act, but we can influence this discussion, and we do in the Grow America Act by saying that drivers on duty, not driving, need to be compensated at least at the minimum wage level. Frankly, it should be 3 or 4 times that, but we have to set a floor. So I want you to be aware of that. That is a core provision in that bill for me. And it's one of the very important pieces. The remainder of the bill is much more important perhaps to the nation in some ways, with a $302 billion multi-year, 6-year investment in our infrastructure. But again, it's called Grow America for a reason. Because we need to invest in our America, in our system. It brings jobs, it enables improved freight flows, it enables, in my view, the opportunity to recognize the essence that truck drivers also should be compensated at all times that you're on duty. So with that, I would like to close my comments. I want to thank folks I had a chance to meet. We've got a great team here from a very important research community when it comes to driving. And do you mind if I call you out? It's too late now, because I already have. The National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health has done some remarkable work in surveying drivers at truck stops across the nation to get closer to a sense of what are the challenges that you face as professionals that we can use to elevate and raise the sensitivity of the rest of your community as to how we need to make changes to that. And so I'm very pleased they're here, and for those of you who I've met at MATS and at other shows, thank you very much for taking time to listen. And with that, Tom, I'm going to wrap it up and let you do questions. Good. And you can do the mic and I'll hold this.
I'll throw you a softball first. Have you ever spent time in the truck and to know what the heck you are doing to make the laws?
Thank you for bleeping out the bleep. So yeah, I have spent time in the truck. I spent time in the truck when I was young and working in a barn. I spent time in the truck when I went out west and worked with show horses. But now's the time where I've driven just a little bit. But most recently, I had the opportunity of riding along with Leo Wilkins. Some of you know, he was just a remarkable owner-operator. And we went from Maryland to Missouri. We did that last fall. I was fortunate enough, when we stopped at the end of the first day, he took the hotel room and I got to sleep in the truck. So again, I had a much better sense after 2 full days of driving of the strengths, the challenges, the sensitivities to ensuring that you are able to maintain your health. That this model of the longer you sit, the more money you make, to understand what that really means. So that's not a line from Leo, by the way, but it's a line that gets at this whole issue about your ability to do your work and still provide yourself the time to get out of the truck, to take a break, deliver your load, not have to understand the level of stress that's built into your work day, that certainly is stress built in through the constraints of an hours of service operating environment.
I'm going to try to put, since you brought this up a couple times, I'm going to try to put the detention question into a couple ones.
Okay.
We've had some recent deaths because of people unable to get into shipper yards, and trespassing issues, and detention time. What's the safety justification the agency is using to have drivers paid by the hour? And also, what is the responsibility of the shipping community to make sure that our drivers are not put into detention situations?
So the basic model that many of you have know far better than I do is that you have freight to deliver from point A to B, and you are paid according to getting that load delivered by the miles you run, by the actual turn on that load. And you're doing it against in that constrained environment. It's not just a 24-hour day. You know, it's a 24-hour day that includes a 14-hour driving window and 11-hour drive time, and a break requirement, and 10 hours off duty. And so, right? So built into that, a shipper's ignorance or disrespect for your time that nobody else is paying for but you. And that detention compensation, by virtue of its very model, operating within the constraints that a safety conscious nation is expecting of you, pushes you to push physical and legal limits. A model where you are paid for every hour you are on duty at a level that reflects the professionalism and the essentiality of the service you provide, gives you the opportunity to know that if you get that load delivered or not today, because of traffic, because of shipper constraints, that you are still going to be able to support your family, keep a roof over your head, ensure your kids get to baseball, your kids get to college, all of those basic factors that in many ways remain really just a very fundamental stress to you today when you've got big hours of your day, significant hours of your work week, where you're not being compensated and you are on duty and responsible for the freight.
Hours of service question, I guess it's two-part, is when you're utilizing team drivers and you have the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. and the restart, what would be the sense, or would there be any sense in having 1 to 5 p.m. the night driver as opposed to the day driver? Is there any justification of the shifting of the hours for team drivers?
That's a great question. In fact, sleep research, both lab research that was done in 2 phases when we were working on the hours of service rule, and actually before we went into this rule proposal that's in place today, as well as field research done afterwards, reinforces what sleep scientists have known for a very long time, that your body craves rest at the most intense time of its need during the period from midnight to 6 a.m. That's when your circadian low is at its very lowest. When your body, in order to restore any sense of health or well-being and to prevent chronic illness, has got to get some rest. Just how all your cells regenerate. That period, again, is midnight to 6 in the morning. It's not 1 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon. There is a circadian low then, but the lowest of the lows is that one that happens in 3 hours. Now, to Tom's point, though, to the point of the question, there are different types of sleep that are more recuperative than others. Nighttime rest, for those of us who work a daytime schedule, we get the best kind of rest. We get to sleep through that night period, including that time, mostly when our circadian lows are at their lowest. Nighttime drivers, generally, we're getting their rest during daylight hours, and that's the worst kind of recuperative rest. Split sleep, perhaps no surprise to those of you who worked under a split sleep schedule prior to 2005. Split sleep is better than daytime rest in terms of recovery, not as good as nighttime rest. So I did a call out a couple years ago for a pilot study, for folks to be interested in a pilot study where we retest the split sleep concept in an operating environment. And that pilot study is taking shape today thanks to the National Association of Small Trucking Associations. OIDA has stepped up. We've got other team drivers who are interested, and of course the American Trucking Association submitted a proposal. The participate in a pilot study where we test the concept of a split sleep schedule. Now that we have onboard technologies like electronic logs and other sorts of onboard systems, those systems enable me as an enforcement person to have some transparency into whether you're going to break the rules or go beyond what's reasonable when it comes to needed break time. You, on the other hand, with a split sleep schedule, can better accommodate when you can get your best rest, get off the road during peak congestion, all the things that drivers did prior to '05 that I've heard quite a bit about during the listening sessions back in 2010. So, for that very reason, this whole concept of the best sleep happening to be the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., we want to also move forward. We've got to keep moving forward. And one of those ways to move forward is to do a full, very robust pilot study on split sleep. So please do feed in through whoever is your best resource in the expedited freight industry, whether it's a company you're under contract to, and let's get that information back to me. You can do it through Tom, you can do it through Charles, so that we can, if there's someone who's really interested in participating in the pilot, we can do that. Okay,
let's move on to CSA real quick.
Okay, and then I've got a couple questions in the audience, I want to be sure.
Okay. CSA, why does CSA only track bad inspections or not require that law enforcement submit clean inspections? Does not take into that account, and why does CSA go against the CSA scores when it's a no fault? You got rear-ended in a stoplight, but it still shows up under CSA scores.
Okay, so that's a double CSA question. The first one has to do with clean inspections. So you heard me mention earlier that about 3.5 million inspections, roadside inspections, are done each year across the country. And before 2010, actually through 2010, the general standard is that about a third of those 3.5 million inspections were clean. So, 30%, 33% of the 3.5 million, a little over a million every year, were inspections that were clean. So clean inspections are being carried out. And all of those clean, as well as inspections and violations, are part of the safety measurement system that underlies CSA. So we do include them. Since CSA has been in place, we've seen the number of clean inspections actually go up. Instead of a third back in 2010, it's closer now to 40 or 45%. So all of you who have been using those scores to improve your own performance, hats off to you because it shows. One of the challenges we have heard a lot about is when you come through an inspection facility and the inspector checks your logs, does cursory check your license status, waves you on through what looks like a level 3, and you are not given credit for that inspection. And that might be at the heart of what that question was about. That is something that we want to be sure we can address. We have had lots of conversations with the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, the folks that represent all the state law enforcement officers. They also are very interested in understanding how we can ensure that any inspection you have with a law enforcement officer is afforded and included in the system. Some of the virtual inspecting technologies that are being tested, particularly along a corridor in Tennessee, offer some opportunity there, as well as, again, maybe a simpler form when the law enforcement officer is doing the level 3. So we're all working on that. If you want me to talk about the crash piece? This we call crash weighting. It's absolutely correct. With the 7 basics in CSA, the 7 is a crash indicator. It's not visible to the public, and it does include all crashes, whether you're at fault or you're not at fault. Not every state identifies at fault, attributable, non-attributable. Many states, other officers, in fact, do not identify an at-fault operator in your police accident report. The nature of the discussion is, and everybody gets this, someone may tragically commit suicide in front of your truck. Someone may rear-end you. When you're doing everything right, your record is clear, the company's record is clear, and someone rear-ends you, and it's Bill or it's all of that data is included, and we understand that that doesn't feel fair. We moved forward with an analysis of this crash weighting issue, whether the agency could take the 300,000 crashes that were reported each year that involve commercial motor vehicles. About 100,000 of those include fatal or injury, about 4,000 of those are actually fatal. So how can we gather all of that police accident reporting, crash reporting, and analyze attributable or non-attributable, accountable or not accountable? The data, that indicator does not exist on all of those police accidents. So our crash weighting analysis work is close to finish. The last leg of the journey before we can reveal it all to you, which is what would it mean to do a crash weighting analysis if we indicated only those crashes where it was very clear to our cause, if we could figure that out. How would that affect the overall CSA? Would it point the agency and law enforcement more clearly at the highest risk, or would it not make a difference? And then thirdly, how do we make sure if we do a system like that, that the other injured party has an opportunity to weigh in? You may be hit by another truck, and that other operator is saying that he's not involved, and you're saying, well, yes, you are. So how do we make sure you have a voice in that process as well? So those are the three major components of our crash weighting analysis. We have to submit the report to Congress before we can publicize it, and so we are less than months away from getting that report to Congress. In fact, we expect that to happen sometime this summer. So we'll be able to reveal to the public what we have found, and open that up for more public comments so that we can take the next step. We got a lady in the back.
While he's working his way over there, insurance minimums. What's the safety justification, and why is the timeline so quick?
The timeline on
to get it out to OMB and get it through the process.
Oh, all right. So insurance minimums. So this is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the rulemaking process. So you've seen the press. The insurance minimums that you abide by today have been in place for 30 years. Inflation has changed medical costs dramatically in that 30-year period. Congress, when you go back and read the language where Congress said, here are the minimums to operate commercial motor vehicles in our country, here are the insurance minimums, and we expect the agency, whoever is overseeing this for DOT, to take the responsibility to look at them from time to time and see if they are appropriate minimum levels of insurance. So $750,000 has been the same $750,000 for 30 years. Our analysis, that both was an analysis we began 2 years ago, and then Congress said we want to see a report. We then delivered it, and then you're seeing it too. Our analysis shows that not only has medical and regular inflation, consumer inflation increased dramatically in that period, but insurance premiums have actually stayed very stable or actually gone down a bit relative to inflation. So the market itself provides some room. But above all, that cost of a crash in the rare instance that it is a serious injury or worse crash is not covered by current minimums. The process for the federal agency, and this is a very important piece, is not quick. We issued a report to Congress, and we said to Congress, it is very important that we get working on this. For the agency to start working on it, we form a rulemaking team. We issue a request for additional information. It's called an ANPRM, and it really signals that we're going to move forward with a rulemaking, but we have to start by gathering information from all of you, from the industry, from the insurance sector, from anybody who's interested in this issue. That's a multi-month process. Then we go back and take that information and turn it into a proposal that includes an economic analysis of the impact. And we put that proposal out there. Now, some of you are already falling asleep as I describe this process. It starts with input from you, and it ends several years later after going through lots of listening sessions I hope we have on this issue, a proposal on the street that it is very important you comment on, and then more work to incorporate, analyze, address the issues and recommendations that are raised during the comment period, a final rule. So it is a multi-year process. But the part that is moving quickly is the opportunity to weigh in on the first phase of this process when the ANPRM comes out later this year. So again, follow your trade press. Many of you already do very well. You do a lot of radio time in the car to follow what you hear and respond to. Stay tuned on this.
Now, there was a committee that met and talked about this, as I understand the group. How many of those folks were drivers? How many folks were insurance companies? And how many folks were trial drivers?
Yeah, so what Tom's referring to is the Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee. This is a federally approved committee and a way for us to get input from all the different groups that have a real stake in truck and bus operations. So it includes, there are 18 members. We work with 20, but we have a limit on how many. We'll say 18, and it's really a third, and a third. A third are the truck industry, a third are law enforcement, a third are victims advocates or labor. And so we've got owner operators very well represented on that. We've got a small trucking company very well represented. We've got large companies. We've got one insurance provider on the advisory. Yes, ma'am.
Just a question. 34 hour restarts and stuff. Why is it 34 hours no matter when you take it? Do you have to wait a whole week to get another week? As expeditors, we run because somebody forgot something. It has to be there the next day. Okay, but then you might sit a day and a half, 2 days. But if you ran like 24, 30 hours that week, then you can't get another restart. It's not wrong. We had our 34 hours, and we should be able to get another restart.
Well, I understand. I mean, the whole interest, the expedited industry is so interesting, and it is definitely a growing sector as folks sort through what they really need right away versus what they can wait for a little bit longer, and that distinction.
Most of the time, you have that situation, not being able to run out of hours that are required.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I've got. I went out to my phone a friend, and part of what he's recognizing is and helping me with is that you are not required to use the restart. You know, the current rule allows you to run 60 hours in 7 days, 70 hours in 8 days. And if you run 60 or fewer in 7 days, you never need to use a restart, regardless of your schedule. If you do use a restart, the reason behind the once a week use is to minimize the risk of using it to restart your week and start fresh logs, 80-hour cycle after 80-hour cycle or 70-hour cycle after. In other words, stopping this running clock of excessive work that absolutely gets at your ability to be healthy, to be well, to get rest. But at the end of the day, most drivers, and we saw a lot of this in the comments we got on the outage service, will never even need to use the restart. It has been used as a convenience, and that didn't get reflected, I think, as much in comments as folks realize. But you do not, with a 60-hour week, you've got a lot of opportunities to get a lot of work done. Okay, yes, sir. And then I think I need to.
Into the team operation, which is quite a few of the expeditors do. Not arguing with the 14, 11, 10-hour a lot of times it makes sense to me for people our age. We should be able to decide as a team, and maybe there should be a category of team drivers where we can divide up that drive time any way we want. In other words, one driver drives 4 hours and he needs to, another driver drives 3 hours. It's their call. In fact, that's a very realistic way to do it. We don't have that option. It's better for safety all the way around. It's common sense says if it's time to take a break, then you take a break and the other person should be able to drive. And that doesn't comply with all the other rules. There's no exception to that whatsoever.
That's right, and we heard that a lot. Again, I heard it almost every other person who spoke during multiple listening sessions back in 2010. This idea of being able to resume some sort of a split sleep schedule is part and parcel of why we're pursuing a pilot study on it. It is absolutely true since 2005, the split sleep allowance was removed for reasons of our knowledge about the impacts of a very long work days and sort of the rotating clock on your health. But I think we all see that there are some real opportunities with onboard technology to sort of figure out how to build that flexibility back in. It has to go through rulemaking. It has to be research and science based, and that's very much why we're pursuing this study. But for today, for the very near future, it's a matter of doing what so many of you do best, which is be those logistics professionals and figure out scheduling and math and hours and constraints better than probably anybody else in this country and moving that expedited freight. I can do one more and then I really need the student to have fun with me.
Good morning and welcome to the great state of Ohio.
Thank you.
Entry-level driver training was dropped by the FMCSA rules that were proposed. This is something that here in the state of Ohio we do the best of any state in the country. Our rules have been in place for decades. We need this to be able to bring the new generation of drivers that has to come in because of the age workforce that we have. What's on the horizon for entry-level driver training? Would it be possible to take a look at the state of Ohio rules and adopt those as an interim to meet the MAC 21 requirements?
Yeah, FMCSA is very committed to moving forward with an entry-level driver proposal. What we did was get the old proposal off the deck because it was just carrying on old ideas, and we had a full set of pretty robust comments in that. Congress also mandated in the bill that passed in 2012, that we call MAP 21, that we press forward with an entry-level driver requirement for commercial motor for truck and bus. And so this is an issue that everybody agrees on, but it's very difficult to push over the edge in a cost-benefit ratio, given that there are not that many studies that demonstrate the long-term safety benefits of a trained driver versus an untrained driver. Don't know why that's the case, but it is what it is. It's just a lack of research. We're pressing forward. We're looking at the opportunity. Is this something that we could do what's called a negotiated rulemaking, where we get all the parties at the table and one? Because I think we agree on about 85% of it, and then there's some core components. There's disagreement among different experts and different practitioners and different users. Could we get a group of all those different interests together at the table and negotiate forward? So we are launching that process soon. With the first step of just talking to all the key stakeholders. We've got someone called a convener, and they're going to go out. That individual's going to go out and talk to all the key stakeholders on this issue and bring all that back. Because whether we go forward with a negotiated approach or we go forward with a normal proposal approach, all of that convening information will help us a great deal in what we're formulating. So stay tuned. We'll see more action. Look, I want to thank you all very much. I apologize that I have to leave. I would love to take more questions. But I've got to hightail it out of here and get back into DC. So I wish you all the best. And I do hope, as frustrating as it is, to see how government reacts or essentially might not react to your input. We do hear you. Believe me, everything you are saying is heard, is processed, is discussed. And to the extent that we can balance your input with all the other folks that have a real interest in the overall operations of our highways, we do take that into account and factor it in. So thank you. For those of you who absolutely excel at safety, very grateful. So all the best.
Thank you all very much.